Well, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. I see that we have 35 people on this Zoom meeting with us, so that's terrific, especially because it's such a wonderful topic for us to be able to collaborate and be together to talk about this. So I am Joy Brand Richardson from JCC Association, and I am joined by our friends from 92Y, Julie and Jessica, who will be leading most of the workshop Zoom with you today, and my colleague Yael from here at JCC Association. We're really happy to be able to bring this program to the JCCs through the work that Julie and Jessica have been doing, and with this collaboration, it will just blossom beyond what it has been and in the JCC field. So I'm going to turn it over to Yael and then Julie and Jessica.
Hi everyone, Joy, thank you for that introduction. My name is Yael Warak. I work as the program manager for professional development here at JCC Association. So very nice to meet you if we have not come into contact already. So I will be moving forward, kind of the point person collaborating with the 92nd Street Y on this very exciting initiative. So I'm super thrilled to be a part of this and help the ball get rolling moving forward for JCCs across the continent. So for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to take about 20 to 25 minutes to go through the program itself, how the rollout will be, what it could potentially look like at your JCC, and all the exciting components, soup to nuts, what that entails. So the webinar itself, a few of you have received some questions already about video and audio from the participants. So because it's a webinar style, right now we only have audio and video for the panelists and the presenters, so the four of us that you see on the screen. However, you do certainly have the ability to write in your questions, which we will answer towards the end, and I'll be moderating that. So please feel free to send all questions my way. And if you don't hear it answered right away, that's only because we're saving all the good stuff for the end. So that's it on my end. Julie and Jessica, go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're just overjoyed to be working with JCCs around the country. Just by way of quick introduction, my name is Julie Mashak, and I'm the Director of Global Programs and Networks at the 92nd Street Y. And I'm also joined by my colleague Jessica, who I'm going to just ask to introduce herself, and then we'll get started.
Hi. Everyone, I'm Jessica Schneider from the 92nd Street Y. I work closely with Julie in the Belfer Center, and I manage a number of programs, but one of them is the Women in Power Fellowship here in New York City, and I've been working on it for about 4 years.
Great. Thanks so much, Jess. So as Jess said, you know, we're both part of the Belfer Center for Innovation and Social Impact at the 92nd Street Y. And for those of you not familiar with the 92nd Street Y, we are a Jewish cultural and community center based in New York City. We run public programs for all walks of life, from very, very newborn babies and their parents to seniors up to 102 years old. So we do a variety of programming in the building. The Belfer Center was really created with the mission to take what 92nd Street Y does at our corner of 92nd and Lexington out into the world. So a lot of our programs are run with a component that actually takes place inside the building, but with the potential to scale the program so that it can exist and be run in any number of locations around the world. And so with Women in Power, it began very much as sort of a local program to serve women in New York City, but was always designed in mind with creating a framework that could then be run by locations around the country. And again, we are just so excited to be working with the JCC Association and very, very excited about the potential of bringing this program to JCCs around the country. So just quickly, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the New York City program, just the sort of nuts and bolts, and then Jess will fill in with some insight into what it's been like, the experience of running the program. But Women in Power was launched locally in New York in 2016 as a year-long fellowship aimed at bringing more women into positions of power. So this was all about sort of elevating senior level women into executive level positions. And although there is, you know, all sorts of disparities in representations, what we found in the workplace was that while there were women in sort of management level positions and in senior level positions, there was often a drop off before women reached the C-suite level positions. So your CEOs, your CFOs, boards, etc. And so this program was really designed to help women get through that stage. So very ambitious women that were planning and had their sights set on those executive level positions. The program in New York City serves roughly 25 women per year. These are women that apply and are accepted. And the program is, I think, probably one of the strongest components, and something that Jess can touch on as well, is it is adamantly cross-sector. So these are women in New York City that are joining the program with backgrounds in the nonprofit world, in finance, in media, but we've also had doctors participate. We've had somebody from the New York City Police Department participate. We've even had a pastor, a college professor. So it was really designed to bring women that are at a sort of similar level together, regardless of where, what background they were coming to the program with. In its most simple form, Women in Power is monthly events aimed at both personal and professional development. So there's a mix of workshops aimed at things like goal setting and some of the sort of personal leadership path, identifying those elements, but also a lot of skill building. So presentations, media training, workshops around having difficult conversations, and some other sort of leadership development skills. Paired with that are also the opportunities to meet with local women in very top leadership positions, so CEOs, heads of major organizations around New York, who will do sort of off-the-record chats with the fellows and give them a chance to learn more about sort of leadership lessons from women in these senior positions. There's sounding boards where the women get together and present a challenge and coach each other through sort of, common challenges that fellows might be facing. And there's also social opportunities. There's an opening and a closing party. There are opportunities to come to the 92nd Street Y. For instance, we had Kamala Harris came and spoke at the Y, and there was a small happy hour specifically designed beforehand for the Women in Power Fellows. So there's also some of those social opportunities to allow the fellows to connect with one another. As I mentioned, I work with Jess in the Belfer Center and will be leading on the scaling of this project, but Jess is really sort of the heart and soul of the local program, and I invited her just to share a little bit of insight into her own experience with leading this program and what she's learned from it.
Thanks, Julie. I'm thrilled to be on this webinar. I'm thrilled that this program is going to be expanding more out into the world. First, I just want to mention how much I love working on Women in Power. Personally, I felt like I've grown so much professionally, expanded my network, my community, just as the coordinator. I look forward to the events, spending time with the fellows. It's just such a treat. As I mentioned earlier, I manage several programs. Women in Power is maybe 10 to 20% of my time, depending on the time of year, but incredibly rewarding for that small of a percentage. The 20% is really in the fall when we're doing the application period. Julie can get more into that. Here in New York, we do have an application, so reviewing all of those to choose the fellows. But otherwise, it's coordinate events, sending emails, sending around interesting articles, planning happy hours. It's great. And the women who have gone through the program just have universally enjoyed the experience and come back again and again and again with tangible examples of how they've applied what they've learned in the fellowship to their lives. That might be a major learning in a management or public speaking or inclusive leadership workshop, but sometimes it's something small. They're going on a big interview or negotiating a raise, and they can't turn to a coworker or a friend, but they know that they have this network of women supporting them, cheering them on. Sometimes it's advice, but sometimes it's just, over text message saying, you got this. It can be really lonely for women as they climb through the ranks. Often the women in our program are the only senior level women at their company. There's not someone they can turn to ask questions of. That's one of the reasons we really stress peer mentorship in the program. Being a fellow isn't a passive experience. It's not about mentors and CEOs and workshop leaders doling out wisdom from up on high. It's about being collaborative and supportive and sharing and seeing your peers as a resource and also realizing that you yourself are a resource. Julie mentioned the cross-sector element. It's one of my favorite things in the fellowship because women will say something like, it is so unique in finance, this struggle I'm having. And then someone in media or law or an NYPD officer will say, that's not just your field. This is not something you're just struggling with. This is something we're all struggling with. And here's how I've worked through it. And the last thing I'm going to mention before I turn things back over to Julie is we have on our application process, on the application, we asked fellows if they could get a little bit into their ambitions and their goals for their year, but also for their careers. And personally, one of the best feelings for me, and something I couldn't have predicted exactly when we started Women in Power, is how being in the program makes women so much more ambitious. Their dream job suddenly doesn't seem lofty enough. And it's just incredible to hear from women, not only how the participation in the program has maybe helped them get a promotion, but that they would never have even thought to apply or even had the confidence to see themselves as someone in that type of role, as an executive director, as an SVP, without the program. And it's this kind of intangible thing. It's confidence, it's ambition, it's support. But those moments are really special and something I think are unique to Women in Power and what we built here. So with that, just again, wanted to share my enthusiasm, and happy to answer any questions when we get to that part of the webinar, but I'm going to turn things back over to Julie.
Great, thank you so much, Jess. I think, even being part of the Belfer Center, it's a program that we're all incredibly proud of here in the center, and I can attest to going to some of the happy hours, for instance, before an event at the 92nd Street Y, and women that have participated in the program from any number of years, to see them reconnecting and getting to know the new members and reconnecting with each other. It's really a wonderful community that's been built through the fellowship. And so with that, I just wanted to switch gears quickly and talk a little bit about how we plan to unroll this and bring this to other locations around the country. So based on the success of the local program, which Jess spoke to, we are very excited about the possibility of offering Women in Power to JCCs around the country. The goals with this expansion is really to serve and elevate more Jewish women into leadership positions. And this can be women that work in the Jewish communal world, or women who work for Jewish institutions, but also Jewish women that work at other industries, which could allow for some of that cross-sector pollination that Jess has shared happened in the New York City program. So basically, as a pilot site, what you would be looking at doing is essentially replicating the program as we run it in New York. That would include recruiting a class of fellows. We would recommend that your class of fellows would roughly be about 20 participants, although we understand that there may be sort of a little give or take with each of the individual locations. If it needs to be slightly smaller, or you want to go and be ambitious and plan for a larger class, that would be possible as well. You would have the opportunity to open that up as an application process to women in community, to women in your own institution, to women at other institutions in your immediate area. I'll talk a little bit in a couple minutes about some of the tools that we will be providing, but an application model would be one of those based on the application that we use in New York City. As I said, this program is really designed to serve Jewish women professionals or women that work in the Jewish communal world. Again, there is the possibility to include some of your own staff in the program, although we would want to maintain some of that sort of cross-pollination across industries and sectors. So would encourage that the program also be open to women in the community that would like to apply. Again, sort of, working off the New York City model, we would ask that you host one event per month, but local JCCs will have the opportunity to shape their local events. We will be providing a toolkit that will walk you through planning the timeline, event design, bringing in people to run workshops if you choose to do that, but also having some plug and play events that can be run on site by your staff. The rough timeline would be looking at running the fellowship itself from January 2020 to December of 2020. We also highly recommend that you built in some sort of mentorship component. As our fellows in New York City, each fellow is matched with a senior mentor. As Jess spoke to the power of the program, really emphasizing this peer-to-peer mentorship, which is absolutely one of the strongest components of the program. But also, we do have the fellows matched with a more senior woman around the sort of in the 92nd Street Y network or from partner organizations that will then serve as their mentor throughout the program. And I'm sure Jess can attest to this, that those relationships then build and often do continue after the fellowship wraps up. And then just in terms of a little bit of housekeeping, we would be asking all pilot sites to remain in touch with myself and the team at the JCC Association. So we would be asking for light monthly feedback. We're still kind of clarifying exactly what that would look like, but it would be probably just a monthly sort of feedback form that you would share with us. And we would also ask that you share just some general demographics around the women that choose to participate in your program. This will allow us at the 92nd Street Y and at the JCC Association to tell the larger story of how this project has scaled and the diversity of women who are participating in it. And will also help us sort of give shout outs to the local JCCs that choose to run this program. We will also be asking that pilot sites, both the local coordinator and then the fellows themselves, fill out an end of year survey so that we can gather some feedback about how the project went. Quickly too, I just want to speak to the fact that all of our Belfer Center programs are designed to allow those local coordinators maximum adaptability. So we will be able to provide you with the framework and ongoing support to run your local Women in Power program, but many of the parameters will be determined by the local JCCs. So for instance, in New York City, we really designed the program to target senior level women with the goal of being in executive level positions. So that was typically women with 10 to 15 years experience, a director level title or a VP level title. And that worked very, very well for our program. But we do have some flexibility there. If that would be your goal, to serve those sort of that demographic, we would absolutely support that. But I did want to also point out that in your own community, if you felt Women in Power would be an amazing program that would serve mid-level managers. You could target women that have 5 to 7 years experience, or if you even wanted to go to women that are a little bit newer to the workforce, perhaps in that 3 to 5 year kind of time frame would work as well. As Jess said, we really have designed the program to serve ambitious women, and in our case, that is senior level. But ambitious women, can serve any number of sort of stops along the way in your professional development. So we would encourage you, if you felt the program would work well to serve a different level, that we would be happy to work with you to design the program for that. And again, local sites will determine their own timeline and format events. As I mentioned, we will provide a toolkit. And so the events in some cases are already sort of plug and play and can be staff led. And in other cases, can have the option of bringing in someone from the community to lead a workshop, and we can offer guidance on how to identify those people and structure those. We also, see this as a great way to feature some of the senior level women that are already in your orbit, whether that's your own executive leadership team, whether it's senior women on your board, whether it's senior women at other organizations you may be working with, then inviting them in to be a part of the program and perhaps serving as a CEO talk or giving a talk around a specific skill set that they could offer the fellows would be a wonderful opportunity. And then just very quickly, we do have the expectation that the program be offered free of charge. I do think that's one of the main wonderful assets of Women in Power in New York, is that there are lots of leadership programs that do require people to pay. In this case, participants are able to participate free of charge. I will say that local JCCs are then open to use Women in Power for their own fundraising purposes. So if you had a local supporter that wanted to support your Women in Power program, you would be free to do so, and there wouldn't be any obligation back to the Y. And then finally, just to talk through a little bit of some of the tools and support that I've been mentioning throughout. We do, as I said, have a fully fleshed out toolkit which will walk you through the process of kind of identifying who will be your Women in Power audience, who you will be wanting to target, your own timeline, and then a series of sample event formats that will help you sort of build your own local project or your local program. We at the 92nd Street Y, and in collaboration with the JCC Association, will be offering 3 digital sessions that will be available to fellows. So these will be some of the sort of more skill building sessions. So whether it's difficult conversations or communication and media presentation, perhaps personal branding, we will be identifying those 3 topics and then offering them so that there will be a bit of sort of a special session that you can work into your own local fellowship, or one that you could substitute for another piece. So one of your monthly events could be using the digital session that we create, and then we could provide some prompts for a discussion around what's covered in the digital session. So you would have sort of a hybrid of a digital session, but also some face-to-face conversation among your fellows. We also, as I mentioned, will be providing an application model. We were providing examples of sort of how we in New York did outreach to recruiting fellows, to recruiting mentors, to advertising on social media, even perhaps a sample press release, if that's something that local JCCs are interested in. In addition to the 3 digital sessions, I will also be working on a series of original blog posts written by very prominent women in the Jewish communal world that will be available just as additional reading for fellows, perhaps to strengthen some of the discussion groups that you may be leading with your fellows around some of the events. And finally, not to sort of bury the lead, but also we will be able to offer a small stipend to up to 10 pilot locations, and that will be for $1,900, which we hope would be used to, in some cases, perhaps defer cost if there was a cost associated with bringing in someone to run a workshop, or also, you know, in some cases, if you do choose to do something more social, that this would be a little bit of a stipend that could help defer some of those costs. And again, we will be able to offer that to 10 pilot locations, but we are happy to work with as many locations as would like to run the program if the stipend isn't of prohibitive to participation. So if you felt that you were still interested in receiving some of the materials, we'd be happy to share them. But with that, wanted to turn it back over to Yael to talk a little bit more about some of the resources that the JCC Association will be able to offer as part of this as well.
Thank you both so much. I know that's a wealth of information to receive in a quick 20 to 25 minutes. So as we move forward, if we have, you know, if you all have ongoing questions, absolutely send me an email, and we certainly will be sending out that toolkit to everyone who's on this webinar, as well as those who registered for the webinar, just to lay the land out a little bit in more detail. So as Julie and Jessica both mentioned, we will be basically launching the applications for pilot sites in the next couple of days. So the application will be available. We'll be sending it via email as well as on the listservs, and it may also be available on jcca.org, but you will certainly all know about it when it becomes available. And part of your work, JCCs, is to identify a local coordinator, so the point person who you would like to be quote unquote running the show, obviously in collaboration with the senior team, but that would be the person who's going to be largely coordinating all of those monthly touch points and providing myself and the 92nd Street Y some light feedback throughout the year. So Julie mentioned that the official timeline for the Women in Power Fellowship for JCC pilot sites will be January 2020 to December 2020. However, we are very excited to be able to invite those chosen local pilot JCC program coordinators to a one-day Women in Power launch and working conference on October 30th at our JCC Association offices. So in addition to the $1,900 that's part of the microgranting, JCC Association is pleased to offer $300 in travel stipend to all of those pilot sites. So more information about that certainly would be delivered if and when you are chosen as a pilot site. So The next steps here, we're going to be sharing the toolkit as well as the application when it comes out. The application would be due, I would say, towards the end of July, and we would be able to get back to all of you by the end of the summer, letting you know whether or not you've been chosen as one of those initial inaugural pilot sites. And we're really excited to be doing this with the JCCs across North America. So at this time, I would encourage anyone who has questions to go ahead and type those in. And we can get those questions answered now. If you have obviously questions ongoing in the coming weeks, I'm available to you, and my email is y.warak@jcca.org. And the emails will also be coming from me, so you'll have that. All right, so anyone who has questions, I'm not seeing any right now. Give it just a minute or two. Joy, did you want to add anything?
I just really want to thank 92Y for choosing us to help them launch this in the broader spectrum of the Jewish world. They could have gone to any other umbrella organization of Jewish organizations, and we're really happy to have them as our collaborators on this program. So that would be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
So one question that just came up, will there be any fees for JCCs that might not be in the chosen for the pilot program? Joy, did you want to address that?
Right now we're working with the number of 10. 92Y has the grant that they're passing along to our JCC, so that's where we are as far as the 10 that are chosen. We won't have any additional funds to expand the program right now, but like we said, we never know where there might be more funding coming from, whether it's locally or from JCC associations. So I would encourage other organizations that might not be chosen to try to start something locally as well. Maybe not being part of the pilot, but let's see what happens.
Another question, and Jessica, this might be something you can speak to. Can you go over the hours that staff dedicate to the role? Is it a full-time position or combined with another position typically of the coordinator?
So the exact number of hours per week varies somewhat, but it's definitely a part-time position. I would say most weeks, maybe 10% of my time. And that is primarily booking events, securing spaces, because we often don't have things at 92Y. If you are New York City folks, we are all the way on the Upper East Side. So we try to find partners sometimes to host events for us. So it's, mostly kind of partnership management, outreach to the fellows to get things on their calendars, every couple months, sitting down and doing kind of some more strategic thinking and planning, sending out surveys a few times a year to get feedback from the fellows, a lot of logistical stuff. I have a colleague who maybe also chips in about 10% of her time, ordering catering, tagging along to events. And then I would say, 1 to 2 evenings, because we do our events after work from 6 to 8 p.m. actually being at the events.
Thanks, Jessica. Another question for 92Y. What does the typical operating budget of the project look like for the 12 months outside of staff?
It depends. When we first started this program, outside of staff time, we basically only paid catering our first year, getting some wine and cheese platters. Otherwise, we had everything donated. We threw up a very low-cost basic website. As the program has progressed and we've built our alumni network, we now have just started to do more events. And we've also, when possible, we like to be able to give honorariums to speakers when we can afford them, in part because it's something we say to our fellows that when they are asked to speak, that they should advocate for themselves that way. I am happy to, maybe Julie and I can work on this together, put together a sample of what a budget looks like, and we can include that in the materials. But I would say this could be kind of as shoestring as you need it to be. Really as simple as if you host all the events at your own location, maybe just getting some snacks before the events. And if you're willing to find facilitators, maybe, you know, headhunters or people who are looking to, you know, headhunters, but, you know, people who do kind of executive coaching, who are looking to get their name out, willing to donate their time to lead some workshops, it can be very, very low.
Thank you.
I would love to just jump on that for a second too, because I do think, you know, Jess has done an amazing job running this program, which began without its own, you know, without any funding attached to it. But also that in your position as a you know, organizer at a JCC, we have sometimes, as Jess can say, found people that participate in the local program because they were also teaching one of our adult ed classes. So, you know, there can be some sort of repurposing of people that are already in your atmosphere. And then also the idea that, you know, we do tend to host outside of the building, but it's possible to host all the events in-house as well, and that some of the events can be designed to really give the fellows a platform. And in that case, you're not necessarily having to bring somebody from the outside in to run one of them, but for example, are providing a model for instance, a sounding board, which can be a very impactful experience for the fellows, can be run with some small setup from staff, and then the fellows are really the featured speakers of the event. So in that case, not every event has to have a huge amount of resources.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so it doesn't look like we have any other questions, but again, if anyone on the webinar or if you have colleagues who were not able to attend the webinar do have questions, my email is y.warach@jcca.org. You will be receiving an email with lots of good information. Just got a question in. How much of the program content is Jewish or has to be Jewish?
Wonderful question. I'll jump in unless somebody else wants to jump in first. Well, as I was looking at sort of the supplemental content that we will be developing, so for instance, the digital content and the blog posts, that will most likely, that will rely heavily on women in senior positions in the Jewish world. But we are allowing some flexibility with how JCCs are defining sort of how they would like to build out some of the local events. And in that case, if you felt that running a personal branding piece in which the fellows would be encouraged to, you know, bring their sort of Jewish identity to that conversation, it does not have to necessarily be run from a Jewish lens. But the content that we will be providing will come most likely from, you know, I don't have the list yet of who will be participating in that, but we will most likely be highlighting women that are within the Jewish communal world in executive positions.
And I think I would reiterate that both Julie and Jessica have mentioned this program is very malleable and very flexible to your site. So as Julie just mentioned, if you feel that Jewish program and content is going to benefit those women who participate in the fellowship in a meaningful way, then absolutely you can infuse that fellowship as part of it. If you want it to be on the lighter end, then that is okay too. So we are by no means being prescriptive about each touch point or each event throughout the year. We just want to make sure that there are regular touch points of professional development happening. So hopefully that answers the questions. Good. All right, I want to thank Julie and Jessica from 92nd Street Y again so much for joining us on this webinar. It is being recorded, so if you have colleagues who were not able to participate in this webinar live, please send them my way and I'd be happy to send them a recording of this webinar so that they can also take in all of this information and decide whether this is a program they would like to bring back to their JCCs and to the women in their community. It's a really exciting endeavor to partner creatively and to elevate ambitious women in your community because we want to make sure that everyone is feeling supported and is receiving the professional development to make this field as great as it can be. So on that, I'm going to wrap up the webinar and thank everyone, and you will be hearing from me shortly.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.